Hey y'all, I'm Dan, and this is Kinfolk, Stories of Community and Connection. Today, I'm sitting down with the incredibly talented Erika Kikola, a budding interior designer with deep Appalachian roots. We talk about everything from her journey leaving West Virginia, the power of creativity and healing, and how she's bringing her heritage into her home. If you love maximalism, thrifting, or just hearing about people embracing where they come from, you're in for a treat. Let's dive in. All right, so Erika, let's go ahead and kick things off. If you want to give us you and like a cute little box wrapped in a bow, who are you and what do you do?
Oh my goodness. My name is Erika Kikola, and I am a budding interior designer. Right now, I live in York, Pennsylvania, but my heart and soul is still in Appalachia. That's where I was born and raised. My entire family, both sides, are from there for hundreds and hundreds of years. I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids, and I am married. I hate when people say that, but I'm a maximalist. I love color and vintage. I love to thrift. I'm very creative.
Just from my own curiosity, whereabouts in West Virginia were you from?
I'm from Grant County. There's like no towns that are really big. The town is Petersburg, but it only has like 2 stoplights. No one really knows where that is because there's nothing there. I grew up a couple miles down the road from Dolly Sods.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know where that is. Like Blackwater Falls is a little further away. So I'm close to a lot of really, really beautiful landmarks in the state.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you end up in York, Pennsylvania?
So, well, you can leave this in. I don't even care. So after I graduated, I ended up marrying someone from West Virginia, and it was a pretty rough situation. We ended up leaving to escape the opioid epidemic, but that doesn't exactly work, and that followed us here. By the time I was 21, I was a single mom, and I was in Pennsylvania, and I met my husband online, and that's how I ended up in York. It's something that I think I'm starting to be more comfortable talking about because there is so much shame attached to it, but it's something that has affected the area so much. I mean, obviously, my ex, he passed away in 2020, and I've lost a lot of friends, classmates to it. So I think it is important to talk about, and especially for people to see someone like me, people assume that I'm from the city, that I've never been to New York City. I'm from the country. Like, I don't come from money. I come from the working class people. And I think it's important to, like myself, who don't exactly give off the image of a stereotype, to talk about it, because it did affect me. And I was in it at one point before I had my daughter.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, and I really appreciate you, feeling comfortable to share it here.
Yeah, that's something that I've gotten a lot more passionate about as I've started to build, this little tiny platform. I really want to, hopefully I continue to grow and be more successful, use that to illuminate, back home. I really want to help those people because the government certainly isn't. So
yeah. So still continuing on kind of Appalachian roots and where you came from, you designed your own wallpaper. With the wallpaper that you created, I kind of have like a 2-sided question. So the first part of that is, how did that take shape in your mind to all the way becoming wallpaper?
So, I do design, and as I've gotten away from caring what everyone else thinks or doing what's trendy, I feel like everyone kind of starts out in that space because, you just look for inspiration and you almost copy it when you're first starting out. But as I've gotten further into my own journey and doing what I wanted to incorporate more of my heritage into my house because I see other people doing it, but they're literally, it doesn't exist. Like, there is nothing for Appalachia in this space. And so I was like, okay. And one of my goals last year was to support Appalachian artists. Again, because I just want to support people from where I'm from as much as I possibly can. And I was looking at wallpapers. I was trying to find something that would work. And I kept on seeing these trends that were, they would feature, like working class people back in like the 1800s, little scenes or whatever. But they didn't really bear any significance to me in my soul the way that I wanted. So I contacted Rachel Edinger, who was an artist that I had found on Instagram, And I was like, hey, I don't know if you'd be interested, but would you want to do a wallpaper with me? I would pay you or whatever, but we could collaborate on it together. And kind of the end product is further away from what my initial idea was, but that's
Uh-huh.
okay because that's how things work. That's how the creative process is.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to give Rachel space to have her hand in it as well because it was something that she really cared about too. Um, it took probably, I would say, about 6 months from us first talking until I finally actually had wallpaper in my hands.
Oh, wow.
And she actually, I didn't even know this when I messaged her. She was in high school.
Oh,
She was about to graduate, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Please graduate and stuff." But then after, she's so talented. Like she's incredible, and she goes to WVU now, and
oh, wow.
I'm really proud of her, and I'm really glad that she worked with me on it.
That's awesome. That's really cool. That's kind of like it's almost surreal in like a moment to take like your childhood memories like that and literally
Yeah.
have them, on your wall.
Yeah, and it is so special to me. I was talking to my husband about this yesterday. We went out to dinner. Um, that so I was primarily raised by my grandparents growing up, and they were very, very religious. I still talk to her almost every day. I'm not religious anymore, and I don't hold on to any of those things, but I can see becoming a mother coming from that area, um, how she leaned into the church for support. Because there was
Hmm.
a time that she had a baby that was born with spina bifida. And you know how healthcare is, especially when you're in such a rural area. Her
Yeah.
daughter was in Charlottesville, Virginia at a children's hospital, and that she couldn't even drive.
Hmm.
So the pastor drove her to church. The pastor's wife took her to see her baby. So I can see how you would lean into that, and you might become radicalized because
Hmm.
they're Pentecostal, and it's just a cultural thing, and kind of creating the wallpaper and these scenes that were very idealistic and perfect and happy is a little healing in a way.
Hmm.
So I'm able to see the nuance and see how people, given their circumstances, they came up in extreme poverty, no running water, back in a holler, like the complete stereotype of West Virginia, honestly. And being raised by those people, there's generational trauma, all of those things. Anyway, so it's very long-winded, but it was healing in a way for me to create that.
Certainly. Yeah. And that's, I feel like we're really similar in a few ways. I was raised Pentecostal as well. So it's like you said, it's almost healing, because growing up, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I hated West Virginia and I wanted to get out.
And let me tell you that I felt that way probably until the last 5 years, last 5 or 6 years, because I was mad. I was
Yeah.
angry, I was angry. I was disappointed in myself and for the path that my life went on,
Hmm.
going off onto the wrong things and doing the wrong things. And then I became a single mom. But, it's like coming home to yourself. And I was really denying a huge part of myself by rejecting West Virginia entirely and my culture entirely. And it has been very therapeutic to give it some appreciation and what it deserves.
Certainly. And that's kind of how I feel as well, kind of with this little project that I'm working on with, connecting and meeting people because I didn't like the people. I didn't like the places here. So it's now that I'm actually getting to talk with people and to actually experience the beauty of the nature and the people. It's really reshaped, Appalachia and West Virginia for me.
Yeah, you're taking back the story. You're taking back the
Exactly.
story. And I feel the same exact way. I still don't go home to my hometown a whole lot just because it's part of it also too is there are some really bad memories
Hmm.
that going home, which reminds me of, especially with my ex, and it was a really abusive situation.
Certainly.
So it kind of, I want to take back those memories
Hmm.
because I do have the memories of riding four-wheelers with my pappy and gardening and all of the things that were magical about growing up there, especially in the summertime and with the scenery and everything, that were kind of overridden with these tainted memories of other painful memories that I'm still working through that. I'm still working through it. I actually really would like to move back to Appalachia. I think that there is a lot of value um, in growing up there in certain ways. For my kids, I would like to be outside more and to appreciate all of that. But it's hard because of jobs and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So kind of continuing on, which I almost want to say that it kind of depends on who you ask. Like, what's Appalachian, what's not. York, Pennsylvania it's not too far out of the Eastern Panhandle, is it?
No, so I looked it up. So according to what's the map that they use? What's it called? The ARC. So I have going through all of this stuff, been learning more about it and reading about it. So York County, I believe, if you go one county over, it's considered Appalachia. So I can see some cultural runoff for sure into the area. It's definitely not home. Like for me, you know what I mean? It's not the same. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen or been to York, Pennsylvania. Give me like a brief rundown of what's like the vibe there. What's like the,
Gosh. Um, so I would say like culturally, I mean, it's an okay city. It's to me, it's like the big city kind of, especially coming from where I come from. There's a lot of like Pennsylvania Dutch influence, which I think does overlap some with Appalachian because I think a lot of my ancestry does go back to Germany and
uh-huh.
whatnot.
I do want to ask, and I'm just my own curiosity. You grew up with your grandparents. You were raised by your grandparents. In the interview, you talked about how much you love cooking. And you mentioned, I believe you were hosting Christmas Eve and you were going to make biscuits and gravy. Is that something that you like had made as a child with like your grandparents, or is that something you picked up as time went on?
So that's definitely something that comes from my grandma. My grandma was actually a lunch lady at the elementary school, so it was so fun because like all the kids know my grandma because she was like the lady that took your lunch number. So she saw all the kids every single day. She didn't start working until she was a little older, but she
Mm-hmm.
started working at the cafeteria at school, and so she makes pepperoni rolls really well. So I learned a lot of cooking from her. Now I will say I use a lot more seasoning than she does. Like she came up to my house last month and I got her to try Starbucks coffee for the first time. And it was just she just got black coffee with half and half, which that's fine. You know what? I wanted you to try something fancy that you think is fancy. You know, she's never
Uh-huh.
had like Chinese food. She has never had
Oh,
avocado before. I mean, these are mountain people that she only her palate's very limited to what she essentially grew up and was able to grow or whatever.
certainly.
But I will say that's long-winded for saying yes. My love of cooking definitely comes from her. She cooked. Oh my gosh, we rarely ever ate out at restaurants, and Sundays were like a good memory because she would make like a hot breakfast before church, and then we would have Sunday dinner after church, and
Uh-huh.
then we would take a nap and then go for a drive and then go back to church
Oh,
in the evening.
it's almost like kind of thinking back. I don't know how. Like, I just couldn't. I'm not much of a cooker because I'm not that I'm lazy, but I kind of see food for me at least, and I know it's different for other people, but as like I want the easiest thing that's going to give my body nutrients to keep me moving throughout the day. I don't want to spend an hour cooking.
It's a lot, and I mean, she did it every single day. It's, I mean, I don't cook every day. I try to break it up and make big meal leftovers, at least 2 or 3 times a week. But
Hmm.
man, she cooked every day almost. It's crazy. And also, I don't think our society is also necessarily, especially now, built for that type of life anymore.
Certainly.
So that's something to it, I think, too.
You say it's always been like kind of in your mind, like your creativity. And I believe you say that like you were like 4 and you were maybe making like wreaths out of maybe like coat hangers. So I guess where do you feel like that creativity sparked from?
That is such a good question. I have no idea. And that is one of the things that I can genuinely say that is mine. It is my creation, and it has always been with me. I have no clue where it came from. I did play a lot like outside as a
Hmm.
kid, so I have big imagination. My daughter also is like that. She can. There's a lot going on going on up in there, and I've always been like that. I would go outside and play for hours and just have very intricate stories would be happening, and with nothing, with rocks and just twigs outside. Um, yeah, I have no clue where it comes from. Honestly, I can honestly say that I have just always been this way my whole life.
That's so neat. And I'm kind of envious because I feel like I'm still like honing and crafting my, excuse me, like visions. So,
Yeah, I mean, I've I've gotten better, I would say, at listening to it, or I honestly think that again, part of the healing with my past and everything has helped it so much. It really
mhm,
has. I don't know what it is. It's just like it's like my soul has come back together again.
yeah,
I've become whole, if that makes sense.
it does.
It's very woo-woo to say, but
So, kind of touching on that, almost like inner child vibe. Do you feel like your inner child is happy with your everything that you have now, like the kind of like the life you've created?
I think so. I think that I mean, I definitely have work to do, and a lot of the inner child work, especially being a parent myself, I've got work to do in that area. I can definitely see myself getting, too short with my kids or too, impatient or whatever, getting overwhelmed easily. But I can say that, yeah, would be happy with all that I've done because I kind of always felt like a little too fancy. You know what I mean? Like my grandma, she always was into gardening and
Mm-hmm.
with like vegetables and flowers. And I also love that and cooking. And those are all creative things.
Mm-hmm.
But she was never super creative in the way that I am creative.
Certainly.
And I would always kind of get like scolded for like putting on chapstick at church and, trying to be too fancy or too big for my britches or whatever. So it is a little healing to kind of honor that side of myself that I kind of felt like was a little dimmed before.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Especially the girly side of myself. That is why that I feel like people always judged me for being hyper feminine, and that's just who I am. Like I can't help it.
maximalism often gets a bad rap for being too much, but you've shown it can be environmentally friendly. How do you strike that balance?
So I don't even know if balance exists. I try to maintain visual balance, but that's honestly just what my perception of what visual balance is. Other people might walk into my space and be like, "Holy crap, this is super overstimulating." Now, gosh, it's that's a tough question. I do want to address something that I think is it bothers me so badly. People sometimes will associate maximalism with having money, and that is not my shtick at all. And
Uh-huh.
I don't create this aesthetic to give off the illusion of wealth or excess. I don't have all this
Certainly.
excess to give off that illusion. It's just more ways that I can express myself creatively.
Yeah.
And I do it on a very tight budget. I make so many things. I thrift pretty much everything, with the exception of a couple of things that like I splurge on, but I will save. Um, so yeah, I mean that's kind of how I work out the balance. I don't.
You mentioned thrifting, and that is, I think, an art in itself to be able to, upcycle and take something that is not so much like cheap, but if it's, you find like a busted table at an estate sale, and then you have the ability to revamp it into something that looks, elegant and glamorous. So,
Right, yeah. And I do like to do that. I like to fix things up. I mean, and we do also all of like the DIY work in our house. And I do attribute my ability to do really hard stuff
mhm,
to where I'm from because like that you do that's just how life is.
certainly.
And that's how my grandparents always were. They were so self-sufficient. And I like to think that I get that from being from Appalachian, West Virginia. And I take a lot of pride, I think, in that.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the misconceptions that I had, like maximalism doesn't have to equal, I guess, like overconsumption or something like that, like you can.
No, I mean, there are definitely people that do. It really irritates me because I will see there's this one TikTok account, but she and I think, might get lumped together in certain with style or whatever. But hers is very much Anthropology. It is brand new, and then she's posting hauls. I mean, before New Year's of Valentine's Day stuff from the dollar spot. I mean, it is so much overconsumption and just literal junk that is
Uh-huh.
contributing to the downfall of our planet. And I do not
Uh-huh.
partake in any of that. I try to be as sustainable as possible with
Yeah.
everything that I do.
And I think your house reflects that because the very first like opening scene of that your home tour, like I immediately fell in love because it literally did take me back to I could see like elements of like my grandparents' house or, other people's houses I've been to in Appalachia. So I think you took that.
I tried my best to infuse, like, I wanted it to feel like I feel like I would be really good at set design. I wanted it to feel like somewhere that was familiar that I had grown up in. And my great grandma, because I I had her. I mean, she met my daughter. So my
That's
daughter met her
amazing.
great grandma. I mean, a lot of the women were teen moms my family. So, that happens. So I did have a really close relationship with her, almost more like a grandmother, because
Hmm.
my grandma was like my mom. And her house was, I would say, maximalist, was way more maximalist than my grandma's house. And that's probably why my grandma's house was less. But hers was more on like the Depression era, like
Oh,
poverty,
uh-huh.
hoarding side a little bit, which I don't think that I have that part of it, but I do look back at pictures and like I can see where this was little seeds were planted in my brain when I was like very young. I don't realize it.
I think this was one thing that I picked up on, and I think it's super neat. And it just kind of resonated with me because a lot of the times when people are decorating, or there's people that I know personally that they have like rooms in their house that are, off limits. You can't go in here. It's only available for public or whatever. And that really like, I'm out. Like, okay, like I'm not. So you actually watching the home tours, there were multiple times where you mentioned, this is something my kids wanted, or I wanted to, you were incorporating their visions into it as well. And I just think that's super neat.
I want, I want to encourage them to have as much self-expression as possible. It's actually
Certainly.
funny. My oldest daughter is 12, and so she's in her like tween years, and the reason why you don't see her room on the tours because her room is actually super cool. Like, it has really cool wallpaper, and I got like a
Yeah.
custom neon sign done a couple years ago for her. Is because she has like junky, like not junky, but like flags with like the guy from one of the actors from the Outer Banks on the wall. Like,
Oh,
you know what, girl, you do you. Her, it's very much what's popular,
yeah.
which kind of breaks my heart a little bit. But I'm not going to stifle that because that would be so hypocritical of me to do as someone who, it's all about expressing yourself and being creative and whatnot. But yeah, I'm trying to give them, I guess, in the healing the inner child thing, the home or kind of place that I feel like I would have needed to grow up in,
Hmm.
and I want to make them feel like they have a safe place.
I think that's so like how it should be because I love the house that I grew up in and I loved and like tying it back to how I said when I saw your house for the first time, it just I don't know, made me feel so at home and so familiar. And to me, that's what I think that a home should do.
Yeah, I want my house, I want my home to feel like when someone walks in that they are safe, they are appreciated, they are seen,
Hmm.
they can sit down and they can snuggle up on the couch with the blanket, they can put their feet up on the ottoman. There's especially I have three kids, like and I have a average size, maybe on the smaller side of home. So like I can't have anything precious in here. And even if I did, I always tell my husband this, if I had so like the house we went to earlier was like 8,000 square foot home. And this
It's
was like, I mean,
wild.
it was built in the 1920s. So it was beautiful and I appreciated like going through and looking at everything.
Hmm.
But if I had money, I would have a big farmhouse. It's always going to be cozy and I don't like the pretentious type of stuff. That's not me at all. Even though some people might interpret this as very fancy and like pretentious, I guess. I don't know. To me, this is very campy and over the top, but like in a welcoming way. This is probably the most fancy room in the house, my bedroom. But yeah, I want everything to feel like you can live there.
That's what I love about it. And I love that you use the word campy because I feel like the aesthetic that you have and the house that you have, it's very to the nines, but it's also humble. And it's like and I feel like some people can't attain that. And I just think it's awesome that you have that.
Yeah, I will say it's not something that I see many people doing the way that I do it, if that makes sense, with as much color and personality to it, and incorporating so many different elements, but also Like I want my kitchen to feel like it's an Appalachian mammal's house. Like I want it to feel like you're going to smell biscuits and gravy when you walk in there. There's going to be a can of bacon grease on the counter, but also, make it super aesthetically pleasing.
All right. So before we do move into the rapid fire questions, I always like to, and I'll put them in the show notes and everything, but for listeners or watchers or anybody who would like to connect with your page or connect with you, if you would just list your socials.
Oh, okay. So I actually just changed my handle on Instagram to my actual name because it was something else for a long time. I forgot to tell you that. So it's just Erika Kikola, but you have to put a dot in between Erika and Kikola.
Okay, so are you ready for the rapid fire questions? You've never met a leopard print that you didn't like, but is there a pattern or a print that you cannot stand?
I don't like snake print.
Snake print?
Yeah, I don't know. There might be some bias behind that, honestly, that I need to probably unpack.
Mine's camo, so.
See, yeah.
It's a love-hate relationship.
It is. My son desperately wants like a camo Carhartt coat. And I'm like, you know what? That would be honoring my heritage. But also, like, you've never hunted before.
Okay, in question 2, we're going to jump back to West Virginia. Where was your favorite spot in West Virginia? Or where is?
Easy. That's Davis or Thomas, West Virginia. That is like, be perfect. It's so beautiful. The scenery is incredible, but there's so much creative. Like it's so unexpected. That like tiny little town in the middle, and it's just wonderful.
I love any chance that I get to be up that way. So, okay. And last one is pretty short and easy. I'm just curious myself. Do you have a favorite like thrift find of all time that you found? Or something like maybe like you've upcycled or something like that?
Oh my, that's hard. I actually can't even answer that. Isn't that awful? 'Cause I have so many things. I'm just going to say as a whole, my ornament collection. Because they are so hard to find now and they are so expensive. So I'm so glad that I thrifted that and had that interest back before it became so popular, which I may have had a hand in, honestly. But I would just say that my ornament collection as a whole, like I have thousands of ornaments in my basement. I will never get rid of them because one day I will be able to put up multiple large trees, and I'm going to regret that if I ever do.
So that is everything that I have for today. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about before we go? Any lasting advice?
No. I mean, I need the advice. Golly. I got to get myself on a schedule. I need to use my calendar.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Kinfolk, Stories of Community and Connection. Erika's journey of embracing her Appalachian roots while building a creative life is such an inspiring reminder that home is what we make it. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow and rate the show on your favorite podcast platform. You can also connect with me and join the community on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Do you have a small Appalachian business or know someone who would like to share their story? Send me an email at kinfolkpodcastconnect@gmail.com. Show notes, including how to connect with Erika and see her work, can be found in the episode description and on Instagram. Until next time, keep exploring, stay kind, and don't be a stranger.